What's up, ladies and gentlemen? We're back with another map analysis video. I know this is the content that you guys have been waiting for. You've been waiting for me to look at none other than Grind by Rizzle, TheHorseStrangler, and MaanMan. And you know what that last guy's name, MaanMan, at least that's what it is on Steam. That's a fucking name. I like that name. We're going to get right into this one. If you're interested in how this map came to be, it did come up somewhat briefly in my interview with Rizzle, who is also responsible in part for the layout of Engage, another map that was previously added into the game. So if you're curious as to the man or one of the men behind the creation of this map, you can check out that interview. I'll link it in the description, and of course it's also just generally on my channel. We're going to get straight into this one from T-Spawn, and this map is what I kind of like to imagine if Dust 2 was designed without requiring you to run through a window, or run past a door. Man, wouldn't that be great? Well, this map isn't exactly Dust 2, but it has a double door that you don't have to peek to get to the other bomb site. Wow. Just insane design, insanely intense design. So as usual, I've tried to mark the areas of the map where the rotations appear after a certain amount of time that I've just memorized. And with these HE explosions, you'll see actually a quite common bug in Source where the explosion decal doesn't apply to every material. I don't know if that's something that can be resolved in a reasonable manner by the developers, or if this map is even going to receive too many updates. I think I saw somewhere that it will. But this is the map that I think of the maps that have been added in this patch, Ancient, Mocha, and now Grind. I think this is the map that's been the best received of the three. And I believe it's for a good reason, but we're going to get into that as we break down the map. This is mid, and it's a pretty interesting long corridor. It's not just a long corridor. You've got a nice little cutaway to rotate a bit faster to B, or to just quickly rotate between these different areas. You could imagine somebody making the approach to B and then pivoting to peek out mid as a T if they think that the CTs are holding it from that double doors position over there that I was sort of hinting at in the early stages of this video. And then as we progress on, there's a nice little connector that goes into what's called A yard. Very helpful that it's called A yard. And A yard itself has this other loop back position that brings us to a catwalk, according to the callout, but just a bridge that overlooks the double doors and the mid position in general, which then takes us into this B connector that's helpfully labeled forklift, because there is indeed a forklift. That's the B site, and that leads back to CT spawn. So we're kind of getting our bearings on this map in case you've never seen it before, but given that this is actually in the game, I think there's an expectation that some people will have played it by now. And you can see that mid is more than just a long corridor, so it's not like Train Ivy syndrome where you can only go one way. And actually, there's a number of ways for you to leverage the different angles that are provided by a lot of these different positions. Obviously, the fact that I can come here and try to peek somebody who's holding double doors from this area right here, that's an advantageous area, or something to leverage if you do have control of this position, and it's a reason to go there instead of going here. This decal right here that I alluded to earlier is after 5 seconds of movement, and you'll notice that this decal by the CT position is also after 5 seconds of movement, so you can imagine, oh cool, I didn't even see this. This is a good bit, this is a good prank. It's a different kind of soccer ball. I can't believe I haven't seen this. Usually this area just gets naded in all my games, so maybe that explains it. Anyway, that sidetrack aside, obviously you can actually spot down through CT spawn well before you actually step out, but if you were holding W like art style, you would end up right about here, and maybe a little bit further back depending on your spawn after 5 seconds of walking. And the same is true over here. After 5 seconds of walking, you'd be in this general area. I don't think you'd be too much further than this if you were holding W, but it's almost a moot point because of the fact that it's very unlikely you'll be able to throw nades or anything like that to try and blind people. You'll notice that this area over here is quite almost deliberately designed to not allow you to throw nades over it. So if you want to actually get out here, you almost have to find some creative smoke lineups, like maybe something like that would be useful. I'm not sure. Yeah, that looks like it would be pretty good. Let's see it from the other angle. I'll go ahead and throw an AK at that little tumbleweed. And indeed, we do have pretty much no way to actually spot this. I guess you would want it, if you were trying to go to A yard from this, you'd want it to go a little bit further. So you'd want it to go like, I'm just going to assume that'll land somewhere. Apparently, not exactly. But if you could get it to something like this, that would probably be pretty good. Unfortunately, I could still see through that. So there's probably going to be some perfect smoke that you have to find. maybe even 2, like nuke style, where you have to throw 2 smokes or 3 smokes in some cases just to get map control. But I wouldn't imagine that would be super effective. You could also just throw a flash with the same lineup, and as long as it's going deep enough to actually properly flash these people, especially if you throw the smoke first, there's no way for me as an opper to like realize, oh shit, there's a flash coming. Like I would have to be pretty close to even hear it, and odds are that's not the only sound that's being played. So there's a number of things there. You can certainly deconstruct this area in and of itself because it does yield so much map control. I actually think that this A connector area is quite powerful because of the fact that not only does it allow you to split to A, which we'll show off the approach to momentarily, but it also allows you to actually get more map control, consolidate your position as a T in mid, and you have this multi-layered approach of taking map control where it doesn't require a ridiculous amount of expense just to take the map control, like on Nuke, for example, which is obviously an easy one to reference. Or even in some cases, the now deceased Train, where Ts would have to, throw a lot of nades towards Ivy and then actually take Ivy and then maybe throw nades onto the bomb site or whatever. In this case, it's like probably 1 smoke and a flash to get into mid, and then assuming you don't get picked apart by a whiffed smoke or something, then yeah, ideally you'd be able to make it to A yard. The other thing you can do if you're low on utility or if you simply don't want to risk that angle is you can obviously do what I was alluding to over here, where you can make this rotation. I'll talk about the rotation to B when I'm actually going towards B, but in this case you can make like you're going towards B. This is after 10 seconds, so it'd be roughly 10 seconds you'd be here, and then another 5 or so to get into position, maybe a little bit more than that just to take this angle. That's a long time to get to this point, but it would allow you to, in theory, perfectly smoke off that angle, and I'm not really sure if that's a perfect one either. It doesn't look like it. You'd probably want to go a bit either a bit deeper or a bit more shallow. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe if we just maybe we can find some sort of magical lineup that's easy to reproduce for all you guys in matchmaking. But it's not looking too hot here. I'll just throw this one. Well, apparently I won't throw that one. Whatever. We'll pretend that we found a smoke here, and then this, in theory, would block everything off. Yeah, I can't see. I can sort of see something if I go all the way over here, but that's pretty dangerous. Maybe that area is just too high to be smoked off completely, which might be a design flaw, might be intentional, I'm not sure. But either way, assuming you find a good smoke, then you can make the cross easy, but that's very time-consuming. So you have to watch out, and that's where I think a little bit extra utility will go a long way to quickening the pace if you're trying to split from A. The other thing, the sort of elephant in the room, if you're not aware of this, is that there are ways to circumvent this with this cleverly placed boost. So this little area allows you to boost up on top of an enemy and jump straight into A yard. This completely changes how the game is played, especially in these mid rounds when you have these coordinated Ts. You would imagine that's almost as important as like Cash's boost towards that middle area is. It might even be more important, in fact, though, because it does give you an avenue directly into A. I can already see the Vu streams where he's speedrunning Grind instead of Dust 2. He's playing an actual map instead of that. And he just has like 4 people on a pistol round jump on somebody's head and jump out here and then run straight into this little, I guess it's called short, that's a fitting name, this A short position, and take the bomb site this way. Like, it's absolutely crazy to think about. And it doesn't take that much time to set up either. I mean, you can have one person start to make the jump overpass boost style, while a couple of others are actually just doing the normal jump, so that you can kind of get people ready to move. And if it's a well-oiled machine, if it works, it fucking works. I'm just saying. Some nice save spots here. I feel like this is an overlooked detail. I won't spend too much time on it, but a lot of maps don't really have this opportunity to play around some areas to save with. I kind of liken it to overpasses T-spawn area, where if you're outside, for example, B, there's a ton of places for you to try to save in a post plant, whether you're a CT or a T, or if you just have to fall back, and you don't really get those opportunities too often. I don't know. Oh, Jesus Christ, there's a ton of them over here. Wow. I wonder if that was added in an update or something. I really can't believe I haven't spotted those before. Anyway, tumbleweeds aside, yeah, there's a ton of little bits of cover to take angles from and stuff. I had a tweet about this earlier. I joked about how after you play Ancient, playing Grind is hilarious because on the bomb site itself, this is A, of course, you have all this cover to change spaces and to isolate certain angles so that you can like back yourself into this corner and then in theory isolate yourself from somebody who's like peeking from way back from short. You can hold this angle for a CT who's entering, and you can even crouch to isolate yourself from somebody peeking from there. There's all these little things that clearly the cover itself, either it was just intuition or just a happy accident, but more than likely it was actually something that was deliberate, where it was designed like this after a certain amount of time. You just get the opportunity to play the game of Counter-Strike, where you can actually use positioning to your advantage, and you can reposition between kills or between firefights or whatever, maybe with the help of some nades and stuff. That's what we like to see out of, CS gunfights. It's all well and good to just frag out, but if you can do so intellectually, that's what really gets my goat. I'll say that much. So yeah, to see it, there's some misalignment here by the looks of it. To see the way that this whole thing has been laid out, especially on the A-bomb site, firefights are incredibly satisfying. If you die here, it's because you died here. Like, you made the decision to die, not because somebody like peeked from some weird angle or whatever. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff that once you get used to, it just feels very intuitive and very nice. And so that's a compliment I would extend across the whole bomb site, or the whole map rather, across both bomb sites. But also it's nice to see a lot of different little nooks and crannies you can stick yourself into without it becoming like Ancient, where there's so many different angles. And again, like the infamous Valorant map complaint, where there's just so many angles you have to expose yourself to clear a single one. Now, I'm not necessarily of the opinion that you should be able to isolate every single angle on an individual basis, but I do think that maybe you should be max exposed to 2 or 3, and the best move should never be to expose yourself to 2 or 3 angles. I would imagine, like, or more than 2 angles. Like, if the only good move you can do still is a mistake, and it's not some mad scenario where you've made a bunch of mistakes until then, and that's why you've signed your fade away, so to speak, then I feel like that's a fundamental problem with the map, and I don't feel like that has ever happened to me here. When I make a mistake on this map, I usually am punished, and assuming the player is good enough to punish me for that, it feels deserved. It doesn't feel nearly as BS, we'll say, as where the decision-making is kind of taken away from me because of the way that the angles themselves are laid out. So quite nice there. As we get into the B connector, however, I will actually show the CT approach to A briefly, because I've shown it, but I haven't really talked about it. It's pretty simple. It's just this garage area that leads you out. The B bomb site is a little bit further away. This spot right here is where CTs can be after 10 seconds versus this spot right here. So if you're running in and you're trying to pressure out the Ts, and maybe stop a boost like this, which is very vulnerable, very open, which is another reason why it's a balancing act, then, like, if you get hit with that boost one round or 2 rounds in a row maybe, it's something that you can throw in as a CT. You can be a bit more aggressive and maybe pop a flash like over here somewhere from a teammate. It's almost like a long on Dust 2, where you can throw that flash and take the long control, except it's a little bit less gimmicky and spawn dependent. It's a bit more like basically any spawn can probably handle that. So that's a nice little, again, an upgrade over something that we've seen previously in the game. It's a nice little thing, and it's to counter map control that is very dangerous to take, but if you do take it, you get that boost in on the T side. It's super worth it if you can manage to make it happen. Maybe you even expend a smoke over there if the CTs are trying to rush you, and then, oh shit, like, are they trying to do the boost? Is it a fake? Should we try to commit through it? Like, there's all sorts of different questions you have to start asking. Maybe it's too abusive, I don't know, maybe it's too powerful, but I also think that maybe a CT could just rotate instead of going to the bomb site, which I haven't tested the timing on this, but I would imagine they could get into a pretty reasonable position to deal with this, either sitting behind this box to fall back to short, or maybe even like sitting behind this barrel and this little wood panel and actually aiming at the boost itself, because they have somebody locking down mid and conserving the angle there. So there's a ton of different layers there, and it's interesting to me, it's impressive to me, how they've managed to make a map that has this tactical potential without compromising like the everyman approach to CSGO map making, which is making sure that individual skill can still have a lot of power, and you can still have these rushes. You just need to have a little bit of tactics, a little bit of coordination, we'll say. Maybe that's even a better word than tactics. It's a very coordinated map, or can be. Teams can play coordinated on it, which is pretty nice, even if it's a kind of a vague, nebulous term right now. So this is after 10 seconds of walking for CTs, this little area onto the B-bomb site itself. And yeah, maybe that's a bit of an interesting one, because obviously you could be here, you could be walking up the stairs, and mind you, you're not actually vulnerable, because again, this is after 10 seconds, so it'd probably take another 5 or so to actually be vulnerable, by which time the CTs themselves can be dug in, they could be behind this box. I would imagine this would be called Firebox, just because you can Molotov this out very easily. You would need a boost to get back up, I think. Maybe you would even need 2. Yeah, and I guess you could probably stand up here and then Oh, you can actually self-boost because there's a bit of an edge of the railing there clipping out, which is probably an intentional, nice design decision in my opinion. Lets you have a little bit of repositioning power, but you do need to jump up on top of the box. I think you can do it over here. Yep. Okay, so that's actually pretty neat. So if I am actually standing on top of the box instead of behind it and I take a shot, I can instantly try to fall back. This is incredibly spammable, obviously, so I'm still not really out of the woods, but in theory I can reposition probably quickly. Maybe it is always better, actually, to stay behind the box and then just jump over it and fall back if you can get a kill. This position might actually be better off if you take it from this angle. And I did have a fantasy where this opens up and has like a window you can stick out of or something, but obviously that would be a pretty powerful CT angle. Maybe if it made a sound cue of you opening the door, that would be a giveaway, and maybe that would balance that out enough. But as it is right now, I just have an aversion to doors you can't interact with, even if they are just story elements. It feels like, I know the red glow kind of gives it away that it's not gameplay space, but I don't know, something about it just bugs me. Maybe they could just, instead of having that visual detail there at all, they might be able to like board it up with wood or something to make it even more obvious. Then you lose the ability to look through there, though. So I don't know, man. It's kind of a give and take position. Anyway, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about the T approach to B, because I do feel like maybe it's a little overly reliant on being able to split. This almost feels like, not Inferno in the sense that it's a utility fest, but Inferno Banana, where you really don't have a way to split unless you manage to take A control, like not full A control, but the left side of A control, arch control. It definitely feels very reliant on that. Except, I think on Inferno, it's possible to just go through Banana and overwhelm the enemy because of the way that the bomb site is set up. Here, the closed side doesn't actually allow you to find easy smokes. I have to expose myself pretty hard. If I get across here, then maybe there could be a lineup that would smoke off something. Like, I don't even know where that goes. That goes outside of gameplay space. I would want to smoke off this area. I would want to molly off the sniper. I would want to smoke off this area as well. There's so many areas where I would actually want to deploy utility to make this B take convincing, and there's so many angles that I do admittedly have to check, where in a post plant, this area is actually quite satisfying, but it doesn't really feel legit reasonable for T's to be able to get here, and I don't know what would resolve that without compromising the core ideal of the map. So this might be a rare weak spot on Grind in general in terms of, is it actually a reasonable thing to do? That being said, again, this is where I'm talking from a technical mindset, or tactical mindset. Like, can this map be very interesting from a more loose fraggy angle? Absolutely. You can throw flashes through these windows. You can just flash like off of these, door frames, we'll say. You can actually just pop in almost like cache style, we could say, or Dust 2 style, even Mirage style, where you can play puggy, you can play loose, and you can actually make a difference on this map on the B bomb site. So it's not doom and gloom, but if you were trying to take a more Astralis CS, by the numbers CS approach to tactically laying out some sort of game plan, I think you would just find the best lineups for flashbangs. You probably wouldn't be able to use, smokes to a massive effect. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are some really interesting lineups that would have to just be developed over time. I guess I could imagine like a Molotov being used to clear out like that. Like that could obviously work to clear. If it was a little bit further to the left, you would force out anybody who was for some reason standing up here if that became a spot. And I guess considering I was able to do that so easily, it's probably possible to do the same thing if you wanted to. Well, that went a little bit too far to the left, but maybe it's possible to do it like this. I'm not sure, but it probably is possible to Molotov out that sniper spot if you wanted to. Like that, I could easily see that happening. Maybe it would even be like from this angle instead. Yeah, it looks like that would be it, and I don't know if that would spread all the way, but you could find some Molotov somewhere. So it's not actually as doom and gloom as I thought initially, but it will take some actual getting used to the map and really trying out to find some things. Thankfully, with both of these windows open, I feel like there was a version where only one of these was at some point. I think the one right over it. But in theory, that means that you could find, some smokes and stuff, and you could throw them from relative safety as well, which would be really effective, I think. In this case, I actually can't see anything unless I go way far out, and even then I can't see the door. I can't even really I can sort of see stuff over here. It becomes almost a one-way, but you can kind of pre-fire that. You could probably just find a better smoke, to be honest. So there are a number of ways to do things. And again, just limited exploration, walking around freeform. First time I've tried any of these, and just trying to go off of intuition and my knowledge of how CS grenades work. And I'm able to find this stuff. So odds are you'd be able to find some of this stuff yourself as well. Although good luck remembering the lineups. There's not really a whole lot to guide you here. Oh... It's useless. So beyond that, yeah, I think grind is really interesting as far as the layout goes. I do feel like there's a ton of depth, especially mid and A, and maybe the depth on B is a bit more conventional in the sense that you really do need to find the lineups to make it work. So that would very much be like Inferno or even Overpass or whatever. But I do like how you can use positioning to make things happen on this map. You can use positioning and calling of not just where you are on the map, but where you're going and how fast you're going there to dismantle a CT approach. I feel like this map could be really compelling from like a tactical leader who also is trying to put himself in really good position. So I'm thinking immediately of Blame F over in Complexity. Like I would really love to see after like maybe a week or so, not even necessarily too much time, but maybe a week or so of this map being played at a high level. I'd love to see where he goes because that watching Complexity on Mirage is a rare case where Mirage feels really compelling to watch, for me anyway. It's a map where it is very puggy, but when you have an in-game leader who wants to put themselves and some of their players in very powerful positions, and that matters more than the utility they use or the timing that they have, that can be really exciting. Or, of course, Furia Art, you know, that way the timing is the sixth man for him, where he just ends up in very interesting places very fast. Like, there's a lot of tropes with some of these players that I think would work really well on this map, and it's without knowing any sort of lineups. It's without knowing how the enemy CT is even going to be positioning in terms of their line of scrimmage, we'll say. Like, is it 2-on-2? Is it a map where you put like 2 to B, 2 to mid, and 1 to A, or vice versa? How is it? Like, what's the goal here? I think there's so many different things that you could do with this map, both on the CT side for some aggression and on the T side, especially once you find out those nades. But even without knowing any of the individual tactics that you need, individual placements of utility, I think you can have a lot of fun on this map. So that's my first impressions, we'll say. And yeah, quite good stuff, in my opinion. Certainly a map that I would love to see being played by some professionals, and with any luck, we'll be able to convince some people, maybe like the people who put on the Betway Showdown somewhat recently with NIP and Big. They played on a bunch of maps, some of which were custom, like Anubis. And yeah, you know, that's a case where you can get, like, even if it is just a show match, it's still eyeballs on and esports fans and esports players on some of these actual maps, these maps that are overlooked by the broader community. So no surprise to me that grind ends up being the map that most people are appreciative of. I'm quite happy with my time on the map so far. It's quite a fun map, and especially when you do have the ability to call certain boosts or certain positions or certain tactics. I think it's an IGL's playground, I'll put it to you that way, and it's like that without needing nades, which is really cool. So yeah, might not be for everybody, but this map really does it for me. Stay tuned for some more map analyses going forward, and I'll catch you in the next video.